All right then. So trying this out, I wanted to review what we talked about last week. So we were talking about the present simple versus the present continuous. So, the present simple, that over there. So the present simple. And we really talked about last week about the form and how you form the present simple. We talked about use a little bit, and I want to get into that in a minute. But first, just the form. And remember, in the present simple, you have the verb be, which is completely separate from everything else. It's very independent, does not follow the other rules of the other verbs. It's a completely separate verb. It does not follow any of the other rules that we talked about. So in the verb be, so the rule of all sentences in English, the affirmative is subject plus verb. The negative is subject plus verb plus not. And the question is verb plus subject. So question, negative, and an affirmative. So these are kind of the rules of how a sentence is formed in English. In the affirmative, it's sentence or subject plus verb. Negative is subject plus verb plus not. And the question, a verb is before the subject. You put the verb and then you put the subject. Now that depends on whether it has a helping verb or not, but in general, that is the way that is what I call the grammar math of how verbs and how sentences are structured in English. So the verb be follows it exactly. So the subject, let's say, is he. The verb is. Negative, so that's affirmative. Negative, he is not. And the question is he. So it follows it exactly. We have the subject plus verb, subject plus verb, he is. Subject plus verb plus not, he is not. And the verb plus subject is he. Okay. Now the thing with all the other verbs that we talked about is that, and I'm going to change the color so that kind of make it different. So all other verbs, for example, walk, need a helping verb. So it follows the same pattern. It follows the same grammar math, except that the other verbs need help. They're weak. We talked about that a couple of classes ago, that these verbs need help. They can't create negative and they can't create question sentences without help. And so the verb do comes in and helps. Affirmative does not need help. Negatives and questions. It's when we're changing what we're doing. We're changing it up. We're not just saying an affirmative statement. We are changing it to a negative statement or changing it to a question. Then we need help. And so do comes in and helps out. So we still have, it follows the exact same thing, the same grammar math for the affirmative. So he walks, subject, verb. But in the negative, do comes in, and it's do takes the idea of a verb. It comes in and takes that number one verb spot. So here, subject plus verb plus not, it still follows that. This is still a subject, this is still a verb, and this is still not. The only thing is that we need that other verb, the main verb, That's what this is. This is the main verb. And it kind of sits back after all the work is finished. After all the work is finished. After the negative is finished, you know, it's turned into a negative, it comes in and just kind of hangs out at the end. It doesn't do any of the work. It's like that, you know, friend that you have that you put in all the work, or when you're working in groups, you put in all the work, and then there's that like one person in your group who comes in and doesn't really do anything but gets to sit in on the group work and gets credit for it. That's kind of what this does. Does all the work. So then in a question, again, we have verb and subject. Does takes the role of the verb. This is the subject. And then walk or whatever verb comes in and just kind of hangs out. It doesn't really have to do anything. All the work is finished, and does all the work, and then the other verb comes in and just kind of hangs out and gets to complete the sentence, but doesn't have to do anything. It doesn't carry the conjugation, doesn't carry the verb tense, doesn't carry anything. He just comes in after the work is finished. All right, so that's the present simple, and that's kind of a review of the present simple and how it forms. Of course, we do have, which I haven't, you know, that I didn't talk about here, making sure that you have that third person singular S for he, she, and it. He walks, but all the other I, you, we, they get just walk. They don't get that S, and that is why does here, again, it carries the conjugation. So if the subject here was you, the verb, the helping verb would be do, not does. The S goes on that third person singular. All right, so that is the present simple, and that's how you form it. So now I am going to go over the present continuous. Okay, so we're still following this grammar math. Sorry for the writing. We're still following this grammar math. I'm going to change the color again so we can make sure we have something different. So now this we're going to talk about is the present continuous. And this is what I talked about last week, was the present continuous. Again, I'm only talking about the form, how to form these sentences, how to form these how to make these verb conjugations. We're not talking about how to use it yet, but just the form. Now, the present continuous uses the verb be. And so, because we're back with this verb be, we are not using the verb do. Be does not need help. It is a very strong, independent verb. It doesn't need any help. So it functions and it does its grammar math exactly the way it should, with no help. So it follows everything that we just talked about in this grammar math. So for an affirmative, you have he is, subject, verb. But in the continuous, we have the second verb, which is, we're going to still use walk. So this would be walking. So this is my main verb. All right? But it's a continuous tense, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next piece, is what that continuous means and why we're going to use it. So if I need to use the continuous tense, if I am talking about something that's happening right at this moment, I'm going to use the ing form of the verb. But in order to use this ing form, I have to have is, are, and am. They have to go together. You can't just say he walking. Walking by itself is nothing. It can be used as a gerund, meaning like as a noun, like I like walking. But this is not a verb. This is now a noun. This is the verb. This is the subject. This is the object. It is not a verb. So the ing form of the verb is not a verb until it has is, are, or am. All right, so then the negative follows the same grammar math right here, subject, verb, not. So he is not. And then all I do is add on that ing form. And my question, same thing over here with the verb plus subject, is he walking? Okay, I have to have a verb, subject, and then my ing form added on to it. But you can see here that we use the same, so this grammar math here, subject, verb, not, verb, subject, I use here. So subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb, not, verb, subject. The grammar math, as I call it, because it's kind of plus, 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 this grammar is exactly the same. It always follows this. We just have little additions. So again, over here, you can see it over here. So we have subject, verb, not, right? So here we have subject, verb, not, verb, subject. Here we have subject, verb, not, verb, subject. It always follows this pattern. It always follows this grammar math. Subject, verb, not, verb, subject. What you have to do is figure out if I'm using the verb be in the present simple, if I'm talking about everyday things that happen every day, habits, routines, then I don't need to do anything really. I just need to follow that pattern. If I have another verb that is not be, it needs help. And if I am talking about the ing form, again, it also needs help. This is where be is actually helping the main verb, but that's a whole nother thing. If you have an ing form, it cannot be alone as well. It needs something else. It needs am, are, is. So that is basically the form and how to form the sentences in the present simple and in the present continuous. I will note that the past continuous, the forming of the past continuous, is pretty much identical, except you're just going to use, and I'm just going to put that down here, changing colors. So in the past continuous, the form of the past continuous is exactly the same, except now you're going to change the verb, is, are, am, to the past, which is was and were. So he was walking. He was not walking. And was he walking? Okay, again, we're following this same subject, verb not, verb, subject. Same pattern. So there you have it. That is your present simple, present continuous forming. Again, we're not using it yet. It's just how to form, how to write the sentences correctly. Thank you.